everybody, it's Miss Cooksey. Today we are going to be talking about how to solve quadratics. So solving quadratics is a really big idea, but we've actually talked about all of the skills that you need. So when we solve quadratics, we are looking for the solutions. The solutions of a quadratic are just the x-intercepts. So the solutions are where y equals 0. And sometimes we also call them the roots of the quadratic, or the zeros of the quadratic. So these are the other names for them, roots and zeros, but they're just the x-intercepts. So when someone asks you to solve a quadratic, all you're doing is looking for where are the x-intercepts? Where in this graph does y equal 0? To solve quadratics, the first and easiest way to do it is by factoring. So we've talked about how to factor in this class. Factoring is taking a product and breaking it up into what you multiply to get there. And we are going to use something called the zero product property in order to solve these using factoring. So the zero product property tells us that if I multiply two things and it equals 0, then one of those two things, or both, either A or B, has to be equal to 0. So if I factor something, if I figure out what multiplies to get to that product and set it equal to 0, then each of those factors can be set equal to 0, and that is how we're going to solve. There are a lot of examples on this page. I am going to ask that you do not get stressed about the examples on this page and that you just focus on the ones that we talk about. So we're going to do one example of all the different kinds of examples, and then I'm going to ask that you pause the video, try the others, and then you can check your solutions with mine. So the first example we'll look at is x plus 2 times x minus 2 equals 0. And let me zoom in on this so it's a little bit bigger. So we're going to use the zero product property, which says that if I am multiplying two things and it's set equal to 0, each of those things can be set equal to 0 themselves. So x plus 2 equals 0 and x minus 2 equals 0. Well, I can subtract 2 from both sides of my equal sign, and that gives me x equals negative 2. Here I will add 2 from both sides of my equal sign, and x equals positive 2. These are my two solutions. So when we already are given the factors, these problems are pretty easy to solve. But most of the time, we're not going to be naturally given the factors. Most of the time, we're going to have to do the solving ourselves. So here I have 6p squared plus 18p equals 0. I'm going to start by factoring this. So I know the greatest common factor between 6p squared and 18p is 6p. So I'm going to divide 6p out, and I have 6p equals p plus 3 times p plus 3 equals 0. Now that this is factored, each of these factors, so 6p, can be set equal to 0, and p plus 3 can be set equal to 0. That means p will equal 0, and p equals negative 3. If our quadratic does not start being set equal to 0, we're actually going to have to set it equal to 0 ourselves. So we're going to make the other side of this equal sign equal 0. So I'm actually going to subtract 5y from each side, and that gives me 10y squared minus 5y equals 0. I'm now going to factor this by taking out the greatest common factor, so 5y times 2y minus 1 equals 0. And now I can set each factor equal to 0, so 5y equals 0, and 2y minus 1 equals 0, leaving me with y equals 0, and y equals 1/2. So in these examples so far, we have seen an already factored example, set each factor equal to 0 and solved. We've seen an example where we use two examples where we use the greatest common factor to factor. Next, we're going to factor some trinomials. So in this example, we need to think what two numbers multiply to 10 and add to negative 7. Those are the numbers I'm going to use to factor. So those two numbers would be -5 and -2. When I set each of those equal to 0, I end up with x equals 5 and x equals 2. Again, sometimes it's not automatically set equal to 0, and the zero product property, the setting equal to 0, does not work unless our equations are set equal to 0. So to fix this, we're going to subtract 18 on both sides, and that leaves us with x squared minus 3x minus 18 equals 0. So the two numbers that multiply to -18 and add to -3 are -6 and +3. And if I set each of those equal to 0 and solve, I end up with x equals 6 and x equals -3. Our final example is going to be one of those ones where we factor, but there's an a value, so we have to use factoring by grouping. So it's a little bit trickier, but it's a skill that we already know how to do. So I'm looking for what multiplies to -20 and adds to equal 3. I got, oh, not -20, -10. Apologies. Oh, and I did not mean to erase that up there. So I got -10 because we multiply our a and our c value together. So 2 times -5 is -10, and then we have a +3. So the two numbers that multiply to -10 and add to +3 are +5 and -2. So I'm going to rewrite this as 2x squared plus 5x minus 2x minus 5 equals 0. Then I'm going to factor. So in this first example, I'm going to factor out x, and I'm left with 2x plus 5. In the second, I'm going to factor out -1, and I'm left with 2x plus 5. So that would be x minus 1 times 2x plus 5. Now I'm going to set each of those equal to 0. And x will equal -5/2, and x equals 1. Go ahead, pause your video right now, and I want you to try the rest of these examples. If you're following along on Canvas, I linked to this document so that you can see all of the examples that they're given here. So press pause now. Okay, hopefully you press pause. Now it's time to check your answers. So you can pause the screen wherever you would like. I'm going to zoom in so you can see a little bit better, not that far, so that you can check all of your answers. So I'm just going to slowly scroll. Feel free to pause. Apologies for my bad handwriting. This tablet's kind of hard to write on. Once you have checked all your answers, I hope this video was helpful. I hope that you can go back and maybe see some of your mistakes. If you're in my class, make sure you email me or come to our office hours tomorrow so we can figure out any mistakes that you made. Otherwise, be sure to check back in to watch part 2 of the video. We are going to talk about the quadratic formula. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you're in my class so you never miss a video, and I'll see you next time.